I cannot hear that song without thinking about the time I saw Sarah McLachlan. It was 1999 at UBC's Thunderbird Stadium at Lilith Fair. In 1997, Sarah McLachlan created this all-women festival, and a new documentary shows us what it took to get this unprecedented tour off the ground and the struggles it faced even as it was selling out large venues across the continent. Today on the podcast, why Lilith's legacy still matters. I'm Emil Niazi, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Tabassum Siddiqui, Rosie Long Decter, and Suzy Exposito are here. Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
Thank you.
I just want to say that when I hear that song, I have to kind of hear the whole thing. So it's really hard for me to let go of Sarah right now. But to start things off, let's take a listen to this.
There wasn't a lot of support for women. We weren't able to do what it was we knew we could do.
I belong.
Representation for women in rock music wasn't there.
And worse, you're being pitted against each other.
Look at all these summer festivals. They're all male-dominated.
Lilith became a freight train.
Like, holy smokes, this took on a life of its own.
You just heard the voices of Sheryl Crow, the Indigo Girls, Liz Fair, Sarah McLachlan, and Jules. Oh my God, just saying those names is giving me chills. And that's from the trailer for the new documentary, Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery. It recently premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival and airs on CBC television tomorrow. Tabassum, this story is close to your heart. I know. I mean, I felt so emotional watching because I was there too. A 16-year-old me was her mind was blown. I want to hear from you about your personal connection to Lilith Fair and your memories of that first year at the festival.
Of course. Yeah, just like you, watching the film brought back all those memories for me. I mean, I was lucky enough to go to all three of the initial Lilith summers. And I was just starting my career. I was a journalism student, just about to almost graduate, and was really interested in Canadian music. And at the time, Sarah was doing some really great pioneering things. I mean, Fumbling Towards Ecstasy had just come out, really groundbreaking album in Canada, and then her record label, Network Records. I don't think people know, speaking of legacies, how forward-thinking they were in terms of using the internet and other things like that. So, I was super curious about what they were doing, and then all of a sudden she said she had this idea for an all-women festival. I mean, it just really sparked my interest. And then to be granted access as one of the youngest journalists to cover the festival was really exciting. So I remember going in thinking, I really want to know more about what this is all about. And oh my God, these lineups with artists that I was already listening to, So remember going to the Molson Amphitheater in August of 97. And the first day would have a press conference. So Sarah and a lot of the artists that were performing would sit down and answer questions. And it was really interesting right off the bat to hear what some of those questions were. I think we'll get into that a little bit later, but a little bit not really understanding what she was trying to do. Yeah. But she really, took the mantle of leadership there and was able to explain what it is that she was trying to do, bring a lot of women together. They were not able to tour together before that. Two women were not played back to back on the radio. Yeah. So she was really trying to make a difference. And I think that first year showed really, really quickly that they were really onto something.
Wow. I mean, Suzy, some of the names that I just mentioned, like Sarah McLachlan, Sheryl Crow, Tracy Chapman was on the bill. So why was the idea of putting women like this, who at the time were already pretty mainstream acts, so revolutionary? Paint us a picture, kind of the culture that Lilith Fair entered into.
I mean, the 90s were so interesting because, there were lots of women emerging in music beyond pop, beyond adult contemporary. You had women emerging in hip hop, Lil' Kim, Missy Elliott. You had women in rock, like Hole, L7. But at the same time, there was a massive response, from men in the industry, a lot of chauvinism. If you were going to make it, you had to go on Jay Leno, Howard Stern's show. You were subjected to really invasive questions. And these attitudes also extended, up top, on the executive level at record labels, where they, created all these guidelines gatekeeping what kinds of women were able to be commercially successful. And I think Lilith Fair was in opposition to that. It wasn't just a festival, it was also a social movement answering to some very legit grievances from women. You talk about Liz Fair, I mean, Liz Fair spoke about her experience being objectified in photo shoots. Sheryl Crow has been very outspoken about, her experiences coming up in the 80s as like a backup singer and the harassment she was subjected to. These didn't come out of thin air. And when you listen to these women speak in the documentary, they're not just speaking as musicians, they're speaking as activists. They're having the same war room talks that like we were having when I was a college student getting into the feminist movement. Just hearing Sarah McLachlan, Emmylou Harris speaking like feminist organizers was so powerful to me, but their concerns were so legit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very powerful doc just listening to all those voices together. Rosie, you were still a toddler when Lilith Fair came out from 1997 to 1999. But what did the festival sort of signify to you as someone who didn't get a chance to go the first time around?
I mean, there has to be a German word for the feeling of loss that you didn't get to do something, But at the same time, I do feel like I sort of ambiently grew up with Lilith Fair in the sense that like it commercially boosted all these artists who were so present in the first 10 years of my life. And in Canada, we had this CD series, Woman in Songs. I don't know if anybody remembers this.
Yes, I do. I'm very familiar.
This was like a staple of young millennial culture when you were a kid, where it was in, your mom's car's like CD side door. But, and it had all these artists. It had Sarah McLachlan, it had Jewel, it had Nelly Furtado, all these artists who came up through Lilith Fair. And I think through that, I sort of had a sense of what was possible for women singer-songwriters. And then I first really heard of Lilith Fair in 2010 when my mom said, I bought us tickets to the Lilith Fair revival. And I was like, amazing, what's that? Let's do it. And so we went to Molson Amphitheater in Toronto and we saw Lights, we saw Mary J. Blige. And, that was a really financially fraught revival. But even for me as a 15-year-old, I got, I think, a little sliver of what it was like in the 90s to see all these women on stage together and feel that sense of community.
I love that. Before my last car died, the CD player had a CD stuck in it, and it was Women in Songs too.
See, this is what I'm saying.
So this is what you're saying.
Incredible.
As much love as we have for the festival now, at the time, Tabassum, it did have a lot of criticism, right? From male journalists making vulva-palooza jokes, other women in the alternative scene calling it, too milquetoast, hippie-ish, boring. And a lot of people said the festival lineup was too white. And you also had conservative protesters upset about the pro-choice stance that it was openly taking. I mean, I remember getting like condoms and lube and all this, stuff when I walked in the theater. What was Sarah's and the festival's attitude to all this criticism? And are there any lessons we can take from kind of how she handled it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the one thing the documentary does such a great job in resetting is this idea of just how much of a cultural punchline Lilith Fair had become in just sort of wider pop culture. And, even from the beginning, I remember, I was saying I had attended these press conferences at Lilith Fair where male journalists would ask her everything from, do you hate men? To, what is this thing we don't really understand? And, at first it's so interesting.
We're all shaking our heads.
And Sarah, in the film and in interviews, I mean, she was trying to do. And she learned really fast, though. And to her credit, I think the serious criticism, say, for example, around the diversity of the lineup really seriously, and said, you know what, we were doing something really new. All we did at the beginning was reach out to people we know. Now it's our time to step up and maybe get a wider net. And she and her team stepped up. And, a couple of years later, we had Missy Elliott starting like for the first time, Queen Latifah, just a really, really amazing artist that joined the lineup. And so it was really hard to level those sort of criticisms at her after that. But beyond that, I think it really showed that not only her, but her team of amazing women behind the scenes. They were really cognizant of having everyone from stage techs to the people who were working on production step up as women leaders on this thing. She really was able to, I think, make such a change in so many ways in the industry, but also finally being able to turn around that pop culture lens on what she was trying to do. And I think seeing it in retrospect now, all these years later, it's amazing to see from a fan perspective or a journalist perspective just how much of an impact they made. But she, I think, is really reflecting on that legacy herself now, especially she's got an album coming out for the first time in a decade, and hearing her talk about. And yet she's really dug deep and come up with, I mean, there's a beautiful song in the new record that is all about women's rights, and her two daughters sing on it with her.
Oh, that's
lovely.
Very sweet. Yeah, I mean, I remember by 1999, like as someone who listened to hip hop, but also Sarah McLachlan and Jewel, like to be able to go to that festival and have that mix of artists there was like really inspiring to me, because I was also like as a teen, like that's too white, I'm not going. But by the end, I was like very excited to go. And to that point, Suzy, it was great to see Erykah Badu's perspective in this film. And she's in it quite a bit as one of the sort of first Black artists to play Lilith Fair. Tell us about sort of what she was saying in the doc.
Erykah Badu said that her introduction to the music industry was really facilitated by Sarah McLachlan and Bonnie Raitt.
Wow.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
Talk about bragging rights.
Totally.
But in that she got to build her audience while circumventing a lot of the horrific stuff that Black women were subjected to in order to be successful. And I mean, she got to participate also in a very like pro-woman movement. She was able to bring her child on stage with her while performing, which that doesn't really happen even still. It was interesting that she was making neo soul music and like playing for a majority white audience. And a lot of artists might have had complicated feelings about that. But she was like, you know what? They gave me a platform and I used it. It's like what Sheryl Crow said early on in the documentary. The feminine energy usurped the ego in that festival. And that is such an important lesson for not just artists, but any organizers in any movement, is you have to let the mission like usurp the ego.
Yes. Okay, well, to that point, I want to play a bit of a song that, you could sort of call the unofficial anthem of Lilith Fair.
I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountains. Yeah, but there's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me at a crooked line. Unless I seek my source for some definitives.
Oh, it's so hard not to sing, but we're all dancing.
So hard.
Suzy has her eyes closed. I love it. So that was...
I'm vibing.
I am vibing too. That was Indigo Girls with some guest yodeling from Jewel, performing Closer to Find at Lilith Fair. And it's a song that, like, if you're a woman, especially if you grew up at a certain era, it just like, it still gives you chills. It still gets you excited. And Rosie, you're nodding along. Like, it just is such a great song. And the presence of Indigo Girls at Lilith Fair signaled not just this solidarity amongst women, but that there was solidarity also with 2S LGBTQ plus voices and fans. Talk to me about the importance, Rosie, of the festival for that community.
Yeah, I didn't really grow up thinking of Lilith Fair as like a queer festival. But then watching the documentary, it's like, well, what better place to meet cute girls when you're, young and just coming out. And even there's archival footage where there's one attendee who's interviewed and they're like, what's your favorite part of the festival? And she's like, it's a chick fest, And this was really a moment where, Ellen DeGeneres is just coming out And there's a lot of speculation around, is so-and-so a lesbian? Is so-and-so spending too much time with Ellen? Like, this is kind of a stigmatized thing to be spending time with lesbians at this time. And I think what's amazing about Lilith Fair is that it was queer artists, it was straight artists, and they were all taking the stage together, not worried about how they would be perceived. And I think that's such a beautiful statement. And also in the documentary, it really highlights how the Indigo Girls were responsible for a lot of the sense of community at the festival. You know, they talk about how the artists were really shy backstage, nervous to talk to each other. And the Indigo Girls brought this spirit of like, we're the welcoming committee, it's a party. And I think that really speaks to the sense of community that queer people know how to foster and are used to fostering. And I think it's such a shame that after the fact, it became such a punchline of like, oh, is she a lesbian? Is she spending a lot of time at Lilith Fair? You know, I remember watching Glee as a teenager, and there's a character who's coming out, and she says, does this mean I have to listen to the Indigo Girls? And it's like, you should be so lucky to be going to the Indigo Girls concert, you know? And thankfully, you know, Closer to Fine, that song was heavily featured in the Barbie movie. I think we're having a cultural shift there. It's a resurgence, and it's badly needed. So
my name is Emil Niazi. I'm sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. You're listening to Commotion, and we are talking about the new documentary Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery, with Rosie Long Decter, Tabassum Siddiqui, and Suzy Exposito. I want to play a clip now that appears at the beginning of the documentary.
I remember someone bringing it up a few years ago and doing research on it and finding out that all of my favorite artists had played at this event. Somebody like Sarah McLachlan and Sheryl Crow, Pat Benatar, Fiona Apple, Jewel, and all these people that I've spent my whole life just adoring. I was in disbelief that I'd never heard of it before.
So that's Olivia Rodrigo speaking about how she didn't really know about the festival growing up. And we also see a lot of TikTok clips right at the beginning of the documentary where people are just having like their minds blown that there was an all-women music festival in the 90s. And it made me feel very old and, you know, a little frustrated because this was such a big deal, Tabassum, that I'm shocked that something that big could become a forgotten relic. Like, how do you think that happens? As far as I know, the 90s were 10 years ago.
I mean, I'm with you there as the elder stateswoman of this panel. But that being said, I had two sort of reactions when I saw them in the film. And I'd seen a lot of those TikToks and remember being, as a Lilith stan, a little bit like, oh, okay, I roll. Yeah. But at the same time, like, there's something really beautiful about the discovery element. Like, it really is. And I think this film, the thing that really excites me about it is not only all of us who will be super nostalgic from watching it, which is great, but then it really introduces it and reintroduces it to a whole new audience, which I think will be wonderful. But in terms of it being sort of the like rediscovered and almost lost to time, I think we go back to that punchline idea, right? Like the director, Ali Pankiw, who I spoke with for my piece, she really dug into this idea of when I asked her, like, well, we had all this footage and you're looking back, you know, almost 30 years now. How did you sort of come up with what it is that you wanted to dig into? And she said, I wanted to reset the record on this, really, because especially as a younger person herself who didn't go to the festival, all she knew of it were these sort of snide jokes and just so she said in learning more about it herself and learning how to tell the story, she really realized just how much of an impact it had and just how meaningful it was to so many people. So I think this rediscovery of it on one hand is really exciting, but on the other hand, it does make sense of why, you know, people really didn't see it for what it was.
Yeah. I mean, Rosie, as you know, our fellow younger millennial on the panel, how do you think? You know, like, what's your reaction when you see those TikTok clips?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I, you know, had grown up with Lilith in a way that most people in my cohort didn't, perhaps. And I think even for me, like, I remember growing up with the festival and looking up to all these women singer-songwriters, and then I got to college and learned that it was not cool to be a singer-songwriter, and this was devastating for me. You know, I think in the 2000s, there was just such a backlash against these women singer-songwriters from the 90s. There was such a, like, anti-political culture in the 2000s, which
Yes.
is not to say the 90s were great, but,
No,
you know,
but
I think
it was prevalent in a way that it wasn't in the 2000s. Yeah.
yeah, and the critic Jessica Hopper, she did an oral history of Lilith a few years ago, and in that oral history, they really talk about how in the 90s you had all these women, you know, taking charge of their careers, and then in the 2000s, what happened was the shift to digital music and the shift to making music with computers put power back in the hands of these male producers and all these technicians where women were really underrepresented. And I think women really lost control of the narrative in the 2000s, in part to do with that technological shift and that kind of reactionary, bro-y backlash that happened. But, you know, I think the documentary also highlights how the ripples of Lilith Fair lived on. And in the 2010s, we saw so many women songwriters coming back to the fore and taking up so much space in indie rock music. And I think, you know, I think it's Sheryl Crow in the documentary says, you never know who you're inspiring.
Yes. Well, speaking of Sheryl Crow, there's a part in the film where Sheryl Crow has to leave this kind of like feminist utopia and go and play Woodstock 99 for a few days. And if you've seen the documentary or if you've lived it like some of us have, Woodstock 99 became a very aggro event that was rife with violence, rape, destruction, arson. And this is what she had to say in a press conference after returning to Lilith Fair.
The day I got back, I ran to Sarah's arms, sobbed into the bosom of the founder of Lilith. It really, I mean, that was so shocking for me, and I'm hoping it's not representing our future as a nation or the youth of America.
You know, here's the thing. I remember as a teen feeling so safe at Lilith Fair. Like I went, you know, with a friend, we took the bus. It was very far away, but none of our parents came, and we just felt like we could do anything in that space. Like walking into UBC Thunderbird Stadium, I was like, I'm home, I'm free, I'm safe. But the feeling, obviously, of a Woodstock 99 is the exact opposite. And I think a lot of people would agree that that's the culture that we've ended up in, is the very bro-y, kind of violent culture. Suzy, what was your experience watching the doc, knowing that that's kind of where we ended up?
I will say, you know, everything is cyclical. Things, they recede, they come back. And, you know, I like that Sheryl Crow didn't just blame the chaos at Woodstock 99 on Limp Bizkit. She said that men showed up there, you know, with an axe to grind. They were ready to rage. Earlier in the day during her set, you see her very like smoothly talking back at hecklers. That was just inherent to like the crowd that showed up, and there were men who just wanted to make a point. I don't think that energy has changed. I think that has remained in the music industry it never really went away, but I think that women got louder, you know. I think that we have acquired more of a platform. I think about what has changed in the industry since then is the fact that women are some of the highest earners in the music industry. Women have become commercially very successful. They've made immense strides. Look at Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez. And I think about the Eras tour. That summer, I went to Beyonce's Renaissance tour and then Taylor Swift's Eras tour. And I did feel a touch of the Lilith Fair energy. There was so much camaraderie. It was Barbie summer, but it was so expensive. It was just like one of the most expensive endeavors. So I think it definitely begs like a return of Lilith Fair, especially, I mean, as like the American on the panel, we need Lilith Fair back so bad, y'all. Like, bring her back. I'm begging you. But also there's also like, you know, newer culture wars being waged, especially in the States. There is a lot of backlash to the LGBTQ community, emphasis on the trans community. There's so much hostility towards them. I would hope that Lilith Fair would continue to be a safe space where women of all ages, where queer people of all ages can go and safely assume they're not going to end up in a Woodstock 99 situation.
Yes. Well, I just really, really want to thank you all for being here and talking about this. It's so nice to just have a conversation like this on the show. Tabassum Siddiqui is a freelance music writer in Toronto. Rosie Long Decter is an editor at Maisonneuve in Montreal. And Suzy Exposito is a freelance music writer in Los Angeles. Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery airs on CBC TV at 8 p.m. And I am Emile Niazi, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. Thanks for listening.